Welcome to Burnout-Free Me, your success and well-being podcast. I'm Dr. Amy Grimm, and I am so glad you're here. Let's go from burnout to breakthrough together. Hi, everyone. You're listening to episode 74 of the Daring DVM podcast. Today, we're discussing the definition of overfunctioning and what it means to be somebody who overfunctions. And I find this topic interesting because I think that many of us may be secret overfunctioners, and we probably don't even realize it. And the reason why I don't think many of us realize it is because overfunctioning doesn't necessarily mean that you are an overachiever or that you have the typical type A personality or you're just go, go, go all the time. These may be things that we typically think about in people who are high performers and high producers, but you can also be more of that stereotypical type B personality and go with the flow and still overfunction in your life. So as I was learning more about overfunctioning for this episode, it really opened my eyes to areas where I'm overfunctioning in my own life. And it's interesting because with overfunctioning tendencies, we don't always exhibit them in every single area of our lives. There may be some areas in which you underfunction, and there may be others where you're functioning quite well. So it's not this all or nothing kind of thing. There's likely a degree of optimal functioning, overfunctioning, and maybe some underfunctioning in your life. I think maybe the types of people who become veterinarians and doctors and other high-achieving professionals probably lean more towards over rather than underfunctioning. And I think it's just useful and interesting for us to know that, yeah, you can have a mix in your life. So, what do I mean by overfunctioning? Basically, overfunctioning is being overly responsible for other people. And that can include your family, like your partner or your siblings or your parents or maybe your children. It can include your friends and people in your wider social circles, as well as your colleagues and those in your work environment. And as doctors and leaders, we do have a big level of responsibility in the workplace. And as adults and sometimes parents, we also have responsibilities in our home lives. But what makes overfunctioning different is that you are trying to take over too much responsibility of somebody else. Essentially, you're trying to control others. And you do this as a coping mechanism to help you calm yourself down or manage your own anxiety or insecurities. So for people who don't have a lot of tools and skills to help themselves when they're feeling anxious or stressed or overwhelmed, they may use overfunctioning in an attempt to feel better because their brain is trying to tell them that if they overfunction, they can gain some sense of control. Now, of course, everybody gets nervous or anxious or worried at times, but with overfunctioners, in order to avoid these emotions and to help themselves feel better, they typically respond by taking on the responsibilities, the emotions, the needs, and even the well-being of those around them. And they do this whether those people want them to or not. Because ultimately, it's not really about the other person as much as it is a coping mechanism for their own anxiety. And the sneaky part is these are often people who really seem to have it together. They tend to be detail-oriented, organized, neat, competent. Overfunctioners tend to be pretty reliable as workers, partners, parents. They're often good leaders, really good problem solvers, and high achievers. So maybe can you see a little bit of yourself in this description? An example of how this could show up in your life is if you're the type of person who thinks that if something needs to get done, then you're the one who's going to have to do it. If I want something to be done correctly, then I need to do it myself. If I actually want things to get done around here, then I'm going to have to do it. We think that if we're not the ones to take care of it, then everything is somehow going to fall apart. If you're someone with overfunctioning tendencies, you likely also identify with tendencies of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and in some cases, high-functioning anxiety. The problem is, overfunctioning is not sustainable. You cannot be personally responsible for yourself and everybody else around you and in your life. And it's the slippery slope because you're trying to cope with your own anxiety and exert some control over your situation or in your relationship. Yet, because this is not sustainable and also because you cannot actually control other people, you end up making your own anxiety worse. And this can lead to other unhealthy coping mechanisms. Like maybe you zone out in front of the TV or scroll for hours on social media. Maybe you mindlessly eat or overuse alcohol or develop other substance use coping mechanisms. Some of you become over-exercisers, and others start overworking because you believe that you're the one that needs to take care of all the things at the hospital and make sure that everybody else is doing their job correctly, and you're unwilling to delegate or to fully utilize your team because you believe that if you don't do it yourself, then somebody else is not going to do it correctly. And the thing that's really tricky about overfunctioning, especially for women and those of us socialized as women, this idea of overfunctioning is often glorified. Just think of the narrative of being a super mom. You're doing all the things, you have a successful career, you're raising the children, you take care of the family, and you take care of yourself. And you're praised for it. Our society eats this up. You're amazing, you do it all. Yet, what about the negative impacts to overfunctioning? Like stress, more anxiety, sleep problems, physical health issues and chronic pain, and also burnout. Many of the things that veterinary professionals, healthcare workers, and high-achieving women are struggling with these days can actually be the result of overfunctioning. Because when you overfunction, you're doing more than is sustainable for you. You are doing more than what is appropriate and necessary and healthy. Yet, it's so easy to stay in the mode of overfunctioning because it can seem pretty innocent and well-intended. For example, you may spend a lot of time thinking about a particular family member or maybe a colleague at work and worrying about that person's current situation or their problems. You may also frequently offer advice or help to other people about how to do their job or accomplish a particular task. And if they don't end up listening to you, then you may end up doing it yourself because you're telling yourself that if I don't do it, then it's not going to happen or be done right. And you may even become frustrated with or resentful toward the other person because 1, you are hurt and you do not feel appreciated if they do not take your help or advice. And 2, you didn't really want to do it yourself. You were hoping they would figure it out, but because they're not actually listening to you, you now need to take care of it on your own. So you may find yourself saying things to your partner like, why am I the one who keeps having to do everything? Or maybe to your family, I do everything around here and nobody appreciates it. Or at work, it may feel like you're the one pulling everybody else's weight, yet never getting the praise or thanks or recognition for doing it all. The overfunctioning person believes that they know a better way for other people to live their lives. And I think everyone feels this to some degree, right? Like, if people would just live their lives the way I think they should, everything would be so much better. If you'd just done it the way I told you to, then we wouldn't be in this situation right now. Sounds pretty reasonable, right? But the problem is, when we tell ourselves that we know how to live other people's lives better than they do, it creates a lot of emotional strife for us and for them too. And because we're so focused on trying to, quote unquote, help others, it's easy for us to become overwhelmed, stressed, and then neglect our own self-care. And this is so important because if you want to live a life of intention, fulfillment, and joy, you actually have to take care of yourself. You need to develop and nurture your inner life. You need to be able to spend time with yourself and all of your emotions, good and bad. You need to be able to meet your own needs, physically, mentally, and emotionally. But when you're overfunctioning, your focus goes to others, and you often unintentionally forget about yourself. Another interesting thing about overfunctioning is that it can appear similar to enabling. Enabling is when you are playing the role of the rescuer to someone who keeps playing the role of the victim. But the intent is actually quite opposite. When you are an enabler and you're in this role of savior or rescuer, you get to feel good by helping others. And it's okay if the other person keeps relying on you because it means that they need you, and that's what feels good. With overfunctioning, however, you want to help the other person because you want them to be better, to do better, and you're praising yourself for being the one that ends up doing all the work. So it's less about codependency and more about you thinking you know what's best for them. So why do we overfunction? How did we get here? Like many things, it can stem from childhood. Maybe you had to assume the role of being the responsible one within your family. Your parents or caregivers were not there physically, maybe they were ill, emotionally unavailable, or for whatever reason, they were not there to be the responsible adult. So you assumed responsibility as best you knew how. And so it would make sense, particularly as you're developing and growing up, that you would then continue that same behavior into adulthood. Another reason may be that you're someone who has a lot of anxiety, especially when it comes to watching somebody else make mistakes, or seeing them make choices or do things that can seem kind of unwise. It's like you're watching the train wreck happen in front of your eyes and you just can't handle the anxiety that this triggers in you. So you try to control the situation by trying to control or manage them in an attempt to help you feel better yourself. A more subversive reason could be a sense of guilt or obligation to help someone. This can show up in situations where you feel like you've done something wrong and you need to make up for it. In order to right the wrong or prove yourself worthy, you feel obligated to help in a particular way. There are also some of us who find ourselves in relationships with someone who typically underfunctions. And usually this wasn't quite noticeable to you from the start, or maybe it didn't seem like a big deal at the time. But before you know it, you're invested in this relationship with this underfunctioning partner, and in order to make it work, you're the one constantly stepping up and overfunctioning to compensate. And finally, maybe you just use another person's life and problems as a distraction from your own. There's this unconscious subtext that if you can just stay consumed with the ups and downs of trying to manage somebody else's life, then you don't actually have to address everything going on in your own life. So you may actually have serious concerns about your own child or your parents, or doubts about your marriage or how miserable you are at work. And overfunctioning can help you numb the pain and get rid of that emptiness or anxiety by buffering and giving yourself something to do and distancing yourself from your own problems by focusing on somebody else's. So now let's run through some examples of overfunctioning. And I'm going to read these directly from that article in Psychology Today. Making sure your partner wakes up and goes to bed at a certain time. Using phrases like "no worries" in emails to calm other people down. I do this all the time. Having goals and aspirations for your partner or child that they don't have for themselves. Yeah, looking at you, parents. Finishing people's sentences when they're anxious. Lecturing family members about how to eat healthier or how to make better choices. Telling them who they should date. Giving advice to someone who hasn't asked for any. Always picking the restaurant for your friend group. Lecturing a family member about how to cook dinner when they volunteered. Oh my God, I can't tell you how many times Ty chases me out the kitchen when he's the one trying to cook dinner. Reminding people they should hurry up and book travel. Doing something for your child that they can do so it will create less of a mess. This is like every parent ever. Doing something for someone that they can do because it will take less time. Taking on a task at work because teaching another staff member will be frustrating. I cannot tell you how many times I fell into this trap early in my career. Keeping a mental schedule for your partner because they often forget appointments. Being overly accommodating when people need to reschedule. Not sharing important beliefs to prevent making others anxious. telling people on the internet what they should think and how they should act, reminding someone to take their medicine, telling someone what to order. Oh, I hate it when somebody does this to me. Researching information for someone who can look it up. Creating a secret alternative plan when you know someone will mess up. Reminding your spouse or partner to call their family. Taking over a family tradition because you think you can do it better. Giving your adult parent dating advice. Explaining someone else's thinking in a work meeting when they are present. Updating your friends and family about people who they could contact themselves. Putting more food on someone's plate when they haven't requested it. Hiding alcohol or food from someone so they won't overindulge. Taking over for a colleague when they won't do the task the same way you will. Yeah, I can see that sometimes. Giving someone directions when they are capable of finding their way. That's like every boomer ever. Buying someone a self-help book you've recommended. Doing something for someone after they've communicated they're capable. Reminding an employee about an upcoming due date they already know about. Talking to a doctor on behalf of someone who is capable of communicating. Making decisions for an adult parent that they can make themselves. Mind reading the wishes of a family member without asking them. Oh, here's a favorite one. Telling a driver when to stop, speed up, or turn. Constantly checking in with someone who's agreed to take on a project. Doing a task for someone when you know the task is going to frustrate them. Leaving instructions for a job that a person could easily figure out themselves. Furiously completing tasks for others when you feel bored, anxious, or distressed. Planning a day out for someone who you know will complain about being bored. Talking a lot to fill in the gaps and awkward pauses in conversations. Hectoring people to follow your previously unsolicited advice. Okay, I actually had to look that up. Hectoring means to talk in a bullying or forceful way. Trying to convince someone that your thinking is right. Automatically paying for something to calm someone down. Taking over a group project that is coming together slowly. Steering your child away from experiences that may result in failure. Worrying about other people's responsibilities. And finally, always volunteering for the most challenging piece of a project. Now, if you're anything like me, some of these things sound completely normal. They're not bad, right? The intention is good. They're relatively harmless. And I think occasionally doing some of these things is probably fine. But I think it becomes a problem when acting like this becomes the automatic way that you manage your stress. If you constantly find yourself doing things like this, often without even thinking about it or asking the other person, because you've trained yourself to allow yourself to feel better by doing these things, that is when it becomes unhealthy. The problem occurs when you're doing this for everybody all the time to your own detriment. And you may become frustrated because everyone expects it and no one appreciates it. Yet you still find it difficult to let go because in some ways it's easier for you to do it yourself than to train somebody else or watch them fail and clean up their own mess. And I think for many driven, ambitious, high-achieving professionals, we are often more vulnerable to fall into the trap of overfunctioning at work and also in our personal relationships. And then what happens is we start underfunctioning when it comes to our own emotional health and self-care and personal goals. And this can lead to a lot of internal distress. On paper, your life looks great. You have an amazing career and you're a super dependable doctor who is always there for the team and always willing to squeeze in one more patient and make accommodations for the clients. And at home, you are an amazing partner who is cooking delicious, healthy meals and taking care of the family and making sure that things get done around the house. And you're planning family activities and taking the dogs out and doing things with your children. And on the inside, you are burning out. And you know what? Everybody struggles with these kinds of things, right? You're not alone. There will be some areas in our lives in which we overfunction and others which we underfunction. And I think the key here really comes back to creating awareness. Being able to recognize when you are overfunctioning and when it is okay for you to take a step back. Being able to recognize when you are not prioritizing yourself, and then making changes to support you and your needs. And not allowing yourself to fall into this false belief that if you could just optimally function in every area of your life, then your life would be perfect and then you could be happy and successful. Because if you try to make this an all or nothing goal, then ultimately you're going to create more stress in your life, because perfection in functioning is not a realistic expectation. Life happens, and you just want to be aware enough of what is going on in your own life that you can make conscious choices about how you want to show up and how you want to function. And you want to create that strength and resilience and flexibility so that you're mentally, emotionally, and physically capable of getting through all the ups and downs that come your way. Okay, so if you were listening to that long list of characteristics and you found yourself identifying with a lot of them, and you're now wondering, how do I interrupt this pattern of overfunctioning and what do I do? As always, the first thing is creating and building awareness. Pause and be more observant of your own behavior. Notice what you are thinking when you catch yourself overfunctioning. Notice what you are thinking when you believe somebody else is underfunctioning. And notice how others respond to you when you're overfunctioning. Awareness is about noticing and observing. You're not judging yourself, you're not asking yourself to change. You're just opening your eyes to your own behavior and your own thinking and how others are acting in response to you. Creating awareness around your actions and thoughts will allow you to identify areas in which you may be overfunctioning. It will allow you to recognize the thoughts you have that lead you to overfunction. And it will create an opportunity for you to think about how you want to think and act instead. And remember, your thoughts create your feelings, which drive your actions. So you also want to think about, how do you want to feel? What do you want to feel besides anxiety or obligation or guilt? You also need to be okay with the discomfort that comes with learning to process these emotions. You will need to get comfortable with your anxiety of letting other people take responsibility for themselves and failing. Having these uncomfortable emotions is just part of being a human, and you cannot think your way out of them until you have given yourself permission to feel them and to process them. And I think this is some of the most challenging work that we do in coaching. We don't want to sit with the discomfort. We just want to skip over that part and try to swap out one thought for another that creates a better, happier feeling. And yeah, we know we can change our thoughts, and that's effective and it's amazing, and I'm all about that. And also, when we're feeling what we're feeling, we need to increase our capacity to be with those negative emotions and also know how to process them so that we can come to a new place where we are more open to thinking differently. It's only once you've accepted that you become more open to thinking differently, and then you can change the thoughts that produce the feelings that you actually want and ultimately the new behavior. And in order to do this, you gotta practice. So you will need to look for situations in which you would normally overfunction and then use them to practice and reinforce your new thoughts, feelings, and action. This is the work of breaking old patterns and creating new, robust neural pathways in your brain. Okay, friends, I'm going to leave you with some questions to consider to help you overcome the areas in which you find yourself overfunctioning. If you can, take time to journal about them and honestly answer and evaluate them as they apply to you. Number 1. When does my sensitivity to other people's situations or problems make me overly helpful? Number 2. How would I like to be less responsible for others and more responsible for myself? And number 3. What are some upcoming opportunities for me to practice letting other people manage themselves? Okay, my friends, if this sounds like a pattern that you would like help breaking, then please reach out to me. You do not have to assume responsibility of everyone else and everything around you in order for you to feel less anxious and more in control of your own life. It is possible for you to feel calm and empowered no matter what is going on around you. And it is possible for you to prioritize yourself and your own well-being while still showing up in your relationships and as a professional at work. You know where to find me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram. You can schedule a gifted coaching conversation using the link in the show notes, or visit me on my website, daringdvm.com. I love who you are, and even more than that, I love who you are becoming. Dare to dream. Hey friends, I just wanted to give you a heads up about a virtual workshop that I am hosting on October 19th. It's going to be a 1-hour workshop in which I teach you how to handle your anxious thinking, the nervousness, the anxiety, the dread, and the stress that you feel at work and at home, and especially during the upcoming holidays. We are heading straight into holiday season, and maybe you're worried about big family gatherings where you're going to have to interact with particular family members. Or you're worried about the holiday schedule and everything that's going to come up at work, and how you're going to juggle your job and taking care of your children and probably having to work on the holiday itself and still having to get all the shopping and the cooking done, and you know the drill. So there's a link in the show notes if you want to sign up and learn 3 simple tools to help you in the moment to take away your stress, to feel regulated, and to be empowered and take control of the situation, no matter what situation you're in. If this sounds like a heck yeah to you, I want to learn that shit, then come join me. I would love to meet you, and I would love to see you. And I would love to teach you some easy to implement tools to make your life less stressful so that you can live it with more intention, fulfillment, and joy. October 19th, y'all. Register, and I'll see you there.